looking at our popular Model 21 Gap-A-Flo, and again our special custom molded fitting, in this case 1/2-inch female thread. That thread's right under the inlet port, and again it adapts directly to 1/2-inch ID poly tubing. Here the same thing, the Gap-A-Flo comes with a bottom compression nut that allows you to adapt directly to, again, the 1/2-inch ID 5/8 OD poly tubing to easily share even 1.5 inch standpipe, metal or plastic. Here's another one of our custom molded fittings. In this case, again, it's 1/2-inch female pipe thread, but in this case it's even larger. It's 5/8 ID poly tubing at the inlet. Here we're showing 3/4 PVC threaded coupling by slip, and again we're showing a 2-inch standpipe hypothetically with a rubber washer hose. Here we've got still another popular version, straight in with 1/2-inch PVC piping and 1/2-inch PVC coupling female pipe thread at the inlet, and again the bottom compression nut for the 1/2-inch ID poly tubing, which is very popular, allows for good flow, and it makes it easy to fit into 1.5 inch standpipe. And we're looking at a Model 21 Gap-A-Flo unit, and because of its length and unique design, it tends to be a little bit weak in the midsection. So we've designed wrench flats at the very top of the unit and at the very bottom. So the proper way to connect this is you must hold it with a crescent wrench and then either hand tighten, or depending on the fitting, use another wrench to tighten the thread. And it's always good to use Teflon tape whenever there's a male plastic pipe thread. The bottom, again, same thing. Use a little Teflon tape, although there's no great tendency to leak at the bottom. But there is a bottom wrench flat that we've designed onto the unit, and again, that's to securely hold the bottom of the part when you're tightening the bottom port, just like you hold the top of the part with a wrench when you're tightening at the top. Another feature to point out too is, of course, this sleeve rotates, and if you look on either side of the UPC, there's tiny little marks that need to line up, and if you line up the two sets of marks, one there and one there, so that they're exactly in line, that's the optimum position of the outer shield overlying the inner opening or window. Now moving over here on the bottom, when you use the standard furnished outlet coupling that fits the 1/2-inch ID poly tubing, hand tight is all you usually need to do, just like I'm doing now. Just get it good and hand tight by holding it at the bottom. Of course you can go in and hold it with a wrench if you prefer, but usually on the bottom, hand tight and snug is all you need. Although this is covered and stated in our literature, sometimes people ask, and this little button that we've designed is included in the kits, but this was designed for smaller flow applications, and simply you just put that in the inlet port and use up suitable rubber on the end of a pencil. Push it down till it's really firm and secure and flat on the ledge that's designed inside, and that's again for small flow situations, only used whenever the flow is considerably less, probably than a gallon a minute. Definitely not to be used ever for water softener or a higher flow application. We're looking at another special feature of our Gap-A-Flo Model 21. It's a little longer unit, as you can see, but it was designed to have a full 1.5 inch vertical air gap, even when it's mounted at 45 degrees. It's the only air gap unit we provide that you can mount at 45 degrees. If the flow happens to be a small flow, I've rotated it up. It has a very deep throat or trough, and one would want to mount it at 45 degrees to the vertical, with the throat looking up if it was a very small flow. Otherwise, normally it's mounted in the vertical position. Get on down to the amount and not so much about the unit. looking at here is our standard model Gap-A-Flo, and all we've done from the scene before is to put a short, in this case a 6-inch beef length of PVC pipe, and you'll see what a difference it makes. The water has a chance to begin to straighten itself out a little bit, so you'll see the unit not struggling, for example, at 11 gallons a minute to handle the flow rate. Although, as we've said earlier, in all of our units, we recommend certainly not 11, 5 or 6 gallons, or 7 gallons a minute. Things all over the unit. Set at 12 gallons a minute, which is about the upper limit because of the 18-inch tailpiece of half-inch polytubing. Again, a bigger downstream tube will allow a larger flow. Again, this is the same setting, 12 gallons a minute. Here again we see the flow rate now set at a much more civilized 8 gallons a minute, and we actually have the splatter shield open so that we can view inside the stream, and we see there's no problem even with the half-inch ID polytubing at the outlet. Here we see the Gap-A-Flo flow rate at 12 gallons a minute. Here we see the Gap-A-Flo setup. The rate is at 17 gallons a minute flow rate with a 3/4-inch PVC 7-foot long tailpiece downstream. We're running 12 gallons a minute through one of our high flow units with 7 feet of 3/4-inch PVC pipe downstream. Here we see our standard Gap-A-Flo unit at 18 gallons a minute, approximately 3 feet of downstream 3/4-inch PVC piping. Actually, this is the high flow version of the Gap-A-Flo unit attached to the downstream PVC piping. Here we see the same air gap unit set at 8 gallons a minute with the splatter shield shoved down just so we could see the stream flow inside the unit. What we're looking at here is one of our standard air gap units. It has the outer rotating sleeve, splatter sleeve, which I've just removed to illustrate the point that we're trying to illustrate. Note that there's a flat that we've designed near the inlet port, the half-inch male thread port, and there is another flat down here near the outlet port, which is a 3/4-inch male pipe thread port. Occasionally one of these gets broken, but it usually is, with someone new handling the part, And really, the correct way to do this is to hold it with a crescent wrench while we're tightening on either end of the part. And we need to hold the inlet with a crescent when we're attaching the inlet coupling, such as this would be here. And we need to do the same thing, but we need to hold it at the bottom if we're putting a threaded part on. Now usually if we're putting our compression coupling, we can just hold it by hand, because the compression coupling just gets to be good and firm tight with hand pressure only. Now let me just show you what happens if we attempt to make a threaded connection or something and holding it at the bottom. It's very weak along the neck, which it has to be because of the big window slot that it has. But that never happens if it's installed properly. Here we see two air gaps, Gap-A-Flo units, model 21. One has the C-clip in the intended groove, and this one does not. Now, the C-clips, if they're to be used, and let me hasten to point out they don't really have to be used, but if they're to be used, one needs to slip them carefully, working them up the shaft of the part and over the geometry of the outer surface of the part, which can be done, or you can take the clip and break it and simply just glue a little section or a little piece in the intended grooves. The intention was to keep the splatter sleeve, the round outer sleeve, from ever being able to move down. However, once the O-rings sit for a while inside that are sealing off, and when it's clamped on the wall, there is no reason for it to ever be moved. So we just suggest you can break the clip and glue on a segment of it, or throw it away. It really shouldn't affect the operation of the part. And whether the sleeve is on or off, it's still fully listed and fully satisfies the plumbing code requirements for this type of device. Here we see an air gap unit without the splatter shield at the moment, but primarily the little flow washer that usually comes in the package. The washer's to be used definitely only for very small flows, such as from an RO system. Flows much less than a gallon a minute. Otherwise, it's thrown away. It installs in the inlet of the part, and we recommend just taking a wooden pencil with an eraser on the end and neatly pressing it down. It'll come to rest flat on a ledge that's provided in there, and make sure that it's flat and fully pushed down, and it'll enable the Gap-A-Flo unit to work on much smaller flows. Here again we see a Gap-A-Flo unit that we want to use 1/2 inch ID poly tubing, like the unit laying alongside it here, which is a completed situation. The way this gets installed is a ferrule is dropped into the nut. The two rubber washers are installed, and that's important that they are soft rubber, not plastic, not hard rubber, phenolic, or anything else. They need to be soft. They're pressed in like that. We take our tube after we've cut it square, dip it in some water, give it a little lubricity, rotate it through the part, push it a little bit excessive, about like this. There's a shoulder inside of the part that's designed for it to stop on. It needs to be pushed fully against the shoulder. Then the nut is simply just brought up and tightened. Now in this case we don't need to use a wrench. It rotates several turns, and we just tighten it good and hand tight, and that's the situation. There's basically no pressure at the outlet port anyway, but we still want to get a good leak tight connection around the poly tubing. Here again we're looking at Gap-A-Flo, our Gap-A-Flo unit with the 1/2 inch male pipe thread at the inlet, and one of our molded compression fittings. This particular fitting is designed for, again, 1/2 inch ID, 5/8 OD poly tubing, drain line tubing. This particular fitting is a 1/2 inch pipe thread, female pipe thread. It's also available in a 1/2 inch slip for gluing over a Mr. Drain inlet port or a Gap-It Model 61S inlet port. Here you see part of our air gap Gap-A-Flo unit residing at an angle, and of course it's approved to be installed anywhere between 45 degrees and vertical. In any event, if installed at an angle, then I'll rotate the part slowly to indicate, but the open throat that you see should be looking straight up as the configuration is right now, so that for any small flows, then the deep trough that's formed will be able to handle any of the very small flows. Here we feature our Gap-A-Flo Air Gap Unit Model 21, available as part number 211-211 or part number 211-212. It is referred to sometimes as an inline air gap because it's intended for mounting upstream in the drain waste piping. It must be mounted in the down leg of drain waste piping and usually within 2 or 3 feet of the drain line terminus. It comes with a metal mounting clip for mounting on a vertical wall. The inlet port is 1/2 inch metal pipe thread to fit standard size 1/2 inch threaded PVC fittings. The inlet also fits our molded special adapters. When installing the unit, most commonly is mounted in a vertical position, but its design allows it to be mounted tilted down as low as 45 degrees to the vertical. Its unique design incorporates a rotatable splatter shield to eliminate any splatter droplets, particularly at the higher flow rates. Recommended flow rate usage is 1 to 7 gallons per minute. Lab tested at over 15 gallons per minute.